I'll call the meeting of the Executive Committee to order. Roll call shows that everybody is present. You were sent an agenda. Is there any additions or corrections? Now I look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Kirschner.
I'll second.
Second by Peterson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So that passes. Approval of the February 9th, 2026 Executive Committee meeting minutes. You were sent those, and is there any additions or corrections to those? Not, I would look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Peterson, second by Kirschner. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It passes. Public comments. Public comments today. So move into reports. Administrator.
Thank you. I don't have a ton to report today, just a couple of brief updates. Last week, 4 of us, myself, Deb Banker, and 2 folks from the health department went up to Green Bay and we attended a train the trainer event on the Initiative 1 training that we've been talking about over the past year. So 4 of us are now certified to be able to train other individuals within our county, and we're having some initial internal meetings between the 4 of us to determine our course for bringing that back and groups that we're going to start. So we're very excited to bring some of that leadership training back to the county and spread that further. Let's see. I did touch base with Tim Baroud recently. He is continuing work on committee structure, which we had talked about, that he's doing an overall review of the number of committees that we have, how many people serve on them, which departments report to them and such. Right now, he has a couple of UW-Madison students assigned to gathering data on that. So they're starting with gathering data from other counties throughout the state as a starting point. And then he has a work group that he'll be reaching out to start making some recommendations. So that'll be coming later this year. Otherwise, the other things I have, I've been working with Green Lake County on finalizing the contract and the reorganization needed for the medical examiner's office to be able to take on Green Lake County, which is on the agenda today, and starting to look at 2027 budget prep as well. So we'll talk about that on the agenda also.
Okay, very good. Any questions for Megan? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Megan. Clerk Consol.
So I did get notification that there will be another opioid settlement coming through. It appears that this might be the last one, other than the one that's in bankruptcy that they're still trying to finalize, because it said remaining small entities lawsuit. So we're supposed to be getting the documents for that sometime this week so I'm not exactly sure how much it'll be. It'll be based on the same percentages as the other ones were, but it does look like we'll be getting some additional funding to help support that program. So I should have more information, hopefully by county board, as to what those amounts look like that will be coming. There is an additional lawsuit in the district court. It is filed by a former inmate. It has been sent to the insurance company. Counsel has been appointed. An answer has been drafted and sent into the court. It appears to be frivolous, but there but they have to go through the steps. It does not appear that there will be any liability forthcoming, but I will keep you posted as we get more information on that. And I think everything else is on the agenda.
Okay, any questions? All right, thanks, Ruth. Okay, come clerk.
The only thing that I really have been gearing up for in my office is the April 7th election. We've been very busy collecting everything, getting ready for all of the municipal clerks to come and gather their things and dealing with all of the questions that I get. I have to research now. So hopefully August will be a little easier on me, maybe. I also have a report for Heather. She just said to let the committee know that she is on vacation and she will be at the next April meeting to give you a report.
Good. Any questions? All right, thank you. Clerk of Circuit report. Here. How you doing down there?
Hello, so I am sad to announce that I've had another resignation in my office. Our family clerk that had been with us for a little over a year, put in her resignation, 2 weeks ago. Friday was her last day. So we have started the, hiring process again. We have gotten in about 25 applications. I have a list I've gone through with my chief deputy. We have a list of people that we want to interview, so we're just getting those set up so we can work on getting that filled right away. About a month ago, a little over a month ago, I was able to finally introduce my strategic plan to my staff. Because of the holidays, our workload, funeral leave for certain people in my office, and medical leaves, it took a bit for us to find some time to actually sit down and go over the plan. But now it's been introduced and we've discussed how we're gonna work on our goals. So we started that. Today we had a meeting at lunch with the Deputy Director of State Courts and all of the clerks across the state to discuss some options, ideas, suggestions to things that we can do to help control the interpreter costs. So they're discussing things like contracts, looking at potential contracts, things like that. So the discussion is happening at the state level to see what we can do about those costs. And also, since I was here the last time, Judge Dutcher also was in Madison. He testified in front of some state officials regarding the state public defender issue. So discussions are taking place at the state level regarding that issue as well. So things are moving, at least conversations have been started, so.
Very good, thank you. Treasurer.
Okay, I have the February sales tax report. We ultimately got in $183,932.74 at the end of February. So if we look at February last year compared to this year, we're ahead $17,467.55. I have the January bank rec and then the February investment report. I also just wanted to let you know that I am working on setting up a date and time to meet with our municipal treasurers to host a roundtable discussion, just to go over our new program, things that they like, they don't like, just things that we can work around. And then from there, we'll be hosting some of the real meetings and trainings. And lastly, Desiree and Ruth opened up the tax deed bids, and we received several bids. We sold 10 properties and we have 6 available now after. So it's good.
All right. Any questions for Jesse? No. All right, thank you. Okay, where's the deeds? We got child support.
So we're continuing to work on our strategic plan. We had a meeting last week, and in a couple of weeks, meeting again to continue our conversation. I'm inviting Tim Brood into our next meeting just to make sure we're doing what we need to do and on the right track. Other than that, right now I'm assisting another county as a mentor for their new director, helping with training and such. I also anticipate some staffing changes in the next year. I have one official retirement announcement that is going to happen later this summer, a possible second happening later this year. So we're working on succession planning with the ample notice to make sure that we're keep the train moving, so to speak, you know, with the changes and the longevity for the people.
Sure. Any questions? All right, thank you. Survey. Yeah, okay. All right, finance, Sarah.
So I'm working on a lot of year-end reconciliations and closing entries. Starting to work on preparing all of the departmental funding summaries for the auditors, and then working on preparing all audit requests that we need to do. And then, as part of our strategic planning, I have sent out a survey to, all Share County employees, trying to determine, what their understanding of our budget is, and if they understand how their department budget works, if they understand the levy limit, just trying to get some feedback so we can, put all that information together to start that educational piece to get everybody more up to speed on how the budget actually works.
I see on the sheet you gave us, we're under, I mean, we're still, from last year, we haven't gone above the line on that, but is that mostly because of things that haven't been billed yet, or?
So all of the, I think all of the expenses have actually been, accounted for. Now it's revenue. So our general fund will probably be good. We know that human services and EMS are going to be over. And so I'm still working on some of those, and then, highway is still working on there. So the stuff that you see in red is technically over right now, but not all of that will be over once we get some of the, like emergency management and victim witness. We don't have their grant funding yet, so we know that's coming and those won't be over. So, a couple of amendments that we need to do and line item transfers yet, so.
Okay, very good. Any questions, Sarah?
So you're expecting EMS to be at what this number is?
Yes.
So we increased their budget 400,000 last year, so we wouldn't see that. So are we taking a deep dive into EMS to understand what's going on over there with their budget being such an impact?
So last year, or when we were preparing the budget last year, if you remember, part of that is the write-offs.
Yep.
And I think we saw that hit because if you recall, the old system was not doing any type of billing or anything. So that's where we saw that hit, but it is something that I've discussed with Megan and going back and re-looking at.
Okay. All right, thank you. IT, Gary.
I don't have anything to report there.
Okay, and HR.
Working a lot on onboarding new hires, especially for EMS, but for DHS as well. Just looking to streamline any processes that we have and working to really maximize how we use Tyler technologies. And yeah, that's probably the high point.
Any questions for Deb? No. Okay. Thank you, Deb. Okay, unfinished business. We have one, the proposal to use tax deed property for DHS client housing. Any update on that?
So I met with, Cora and Mike, to discuss this, and also had some conversations with Jessica. This is completely my fault for not catching it in the first place, but when the law changed, last year to, change how, money is paid back to former owners, not just being homestead credit, but anything that is over the expenses having to go back to a former owner. As part of that law, it requires that the treasurer has so many days after they take the property to post everything for sale. So they specifically took out the sections in the statute that allowed properties to be given to municipalities for municipal purposes, or unless it is what they call, unless it has a hazards on it, right? So if it's a brownfield property that still has hazards on it, you have other options that you can do with it besides selling it, but everything else has to be posted and sold. So in looking at that, if we wanted to do this, the county would technically have to put in a bid on the property to purchase the property, even though it's in the county's name, to pay off any outstanding costs, or to, if there was a surplus, to repay the former owner, so as not to violate the takings issue that the legislature was trying to resolve with that. So we have that issue. Then in speaking to Mike, and he went out and looked at a couple of the properties that we were considering, and the amount of money that we would have to put into a property in order to make it livable. would also increase that cost. Now, I still think that there's benefit in looking at it, given that those would be like one-time costs. And if you were going to place a person in there that could be there for several years, you could have several years of payments that you have to make to a facility in, you know, the tens of thousands of dollars a year. So you would recoup those costs. So what we're doing now is that Jessica and I had decided that we would relook at the properties after the initial rounds of bidding had gone through. There are still 2 properties that the initial rounds of bidding is not up yet. And we would see what we didn't get any type of action on from the public, and then see if there was one of those properties that would be suitable to either put money into rehab, or if it would be a property that would be something that would be, you know, more likely that you would take off any failing buildings and put on like a new mobile home or something like that that could be used and still be cost effective. So we don't have a specific proposal for today. We're continuing to work on it to see what properties might be available and what that would cost. I do think that it is something that is going to be more money than we initially had thought about, because we have to add in that factor of the purchase price, as well as the price for making it suitable for living. So we will continue to monitor that and look at it, and I'm hoping that we'll have something more specific next month that we can talk about here. And then given that it would be a change in policy and the amount of money that it's going to cost, we would probably have to go to the full county board after this committee reviewed it. So I hope to have more information at the next meeting.
Okay, with that as well, I'm sure there'd be some cost of upkeep. It's even in place if it was.
Correct. So Mike was putting together like some numbers. So one of the benefits that we do have is that in one of Mike's former jobs, he used to do this in a different job where they would take buildings, they would rehabilitate them, and then they would sell them. So at least he has some idea about what it costs to make things livable. And then he can put together some maintenance type costs too. So yeah, there would be ongoing maintenance type costs. And we would continue to, of course, work with the consumer and his guardian to recoup some of those costs in the form of rent and come up with a contract for that. So there still are a lot of moving pieces and unknown. So I don't think that it would be appropriate to take any action today. But I think that it's something that we'll still need to consider, knowing that the individual that we at least are thinking about, unless something changes medically, you're looking at if he loses the placement that he has right now. And right now that placement is still intact. But if he loses that placement, you're looking at, you know, placement for, you know, anywhere from 30 plus years, because he's in his early 40s. So that is a substantial cost factor to the county if his medical condition doesn't change. Of course, we're still continuing to trying to get him into a neuropsych doctor to see if there is something that would qualify for one of the state programs. So it's also interesting to note that the state is re-looking at how managed care organizations are working in Wisconsin, because it is really not saving the state money like they thought that it would. And so there may be changes coming down the pike that way too, that we're keeping our eyes on as to what they're going to do. And we have been in some contact with the state about the gap, because really the gap that we're seeing is that the types of programs that we currently have to assist people only assist people if they have a medical diagnosis. But if you have somebody who is mentally ill and cannot work, there's no additional funding for that. And so, you know, we have several clients who we have dual diagnoses, so we are able to get them into certain places, but we also have several who are currently able to, like, you know, stay with family members or have other ability to be places, but are completely unable to work due to the severity of their mental illness, and they qualify for like $800 a month in SSI, which really isn't enough to provide housing and living expenses for somebody. So there is a gap in the state system. So we're continuing to work with the state to try to close that gap. But that would take a change in the law. So those things are further down the path, but after we look at what we have left from today's sale and when the next sale comes due in a week or so, then we will be able to sit down and see what properties we have available and put together some better numbers for you.
Would there be any chance of there being some kind of grant dollars or anything for the purchase of something like this?
There's,
Not the monthly care, but just for that purpose.
I think that that's possible, and so we'll be talking, Clara was gonna touch base with Stacy, and I'll follow up on that to see if she knows of anything, or at least have her keep her eyes open as she searches on a regular basis for additional grant opportunities.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions?
Just refresh my memory, so we're looking at this offset cost, right, that the county's incurring right now. What is that cost that we're?
Well, right now, we are not incurring a cost because the individual we have placed at the Blader Inn and his social security payment is covering his monthly costs, and he does get some food share. Luckily for us, he has a very nice guardian who is paying for some additional costs out of her own pocket, and then we do assist in that with some of his treatment because he does get his counseling and his psychiatry here, so we are able to assist with some of that. There's concern that he might lose that placement, and then we would not have a placement for him, and so we would be looking at having to put him into a group home that, depending upon who would accept him, could be anywhere from $30,000 to $70,000.
So if that does happen, is there an option to rent the house for this individual? If we can't find something suitable to purchase, is that an option?
Yeah, we would have to look at that, and we would have to see what was available and what we could work out with a landlord. And given his limited income, it would be something that I think that the county would have to, be a co-signer on and a guarantor for part of the rent. But that certainly is something that we could look at.
Thanks. All right. So then we'll move into new business. A, discussion on 2027 budget planning and direction.
Okay, so I have this on the agenda today, not because we need to approve the 2027 budget right now, but because we need to start the discussion. And what I'm looking for the committee is to start to get some guardrails in place that I can take to the department heads as we start 2027 budget prep. So at this point, I guess the starting point would be the budget timeline, which was included in your packet. If you had a chance to review, if you have any questions, Sarah, or I can certainly answer that. Just a couple of points to note is Sarah has already distributed CIP workbooks to the department, so they are currently working on filling out their CIP requests. And those will be due May 1st. And then if you look at the timeline, a lot of it is similar to last year, but I will note, as was directed by the board last year, we are moving up that initial budget presentation to September. So we're bumping up, although departments will still turn in their budgets under the same timeline that they have in recent years. Sarah and I will have departmental budget meetings in August so that we can get the budget put together and presented to you in September. Understand we won't necessarily have all final figures by that point, but we will have a pretty close rough estimate. We'll know of any significant cuts or changes that we need to make by September. And then it'll still go to the board for the budget public hearing and approval in November. So that's just a note on our timeline. The other sheet I handed out is just some rough figures that I've put together for some initial discussion and starting point. So I'm going to start out with talking about the fund balance, and I know you understand it, but I'm just going to point it out so that everybody is aware. We took about $1 million from surplus for our 2026 budget. So at year end 2024, we had about 9.3 in there, utilizing the 1 million. for 2026 brings it down to 8.3. Looking at what our figures are looking at right now for 2025, again, a rough estimate because we still need to close out books. We are anticipating returning about 300 grand. So that leaves us to date with an approximate 8.6 million in our unassigned fund balance. If we look at what we are required per our policy to have, based on prior year actual expenses. Now, our fund balance policy, remind you, is 25% of Fund 100, which is our general fund, 140, which is highway, roads and bridges, and 160 is EMS. That gives us a required minimum fund balance of 7.1. Right now, we're looking at about 8.6, so about 1.5 over that required minimum. Couple things to point out with that required minimum. I'm not at all recommending that we amend or change our policy on that. I think that's a very healthy amount to have, but just a couple of points of reference so that you're aware. So GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, their recommendation is 2 months of general fund operating expenses. So that's 16.67%. So we're well above that. Ours also includes capital expenses as well within those funds. Typically, when statewide, they talk about an average of about like a 15 to 25% is a general recommendation. 15 to 25% of your general fund is what we should keep as our minimum fund balance policy. That's usually just the general fund, usually just including operating expenses. So just a couple of things to keep in mind when we consider, I do think that that is a healthy amount that we have in there. Obviously, the discussions we've had, we know when we look back historically, what we've taken from the general fund the last few years, it's not sustainable to continue doing that. What I'm hoping to get from the executive committee is some general direction on what is a comfortable amount as we go into 2027 budget prep, because that's going to help guide my directives for the departments. So we know right now today, if I tell all the departments, keep it flat, 0, no increases, that would then mean we're pulling another $1 million from the general fund for next year. I would not recommend that. So we need to continue trimming that like we did for 2026. Just looking at a couple other talking points when we talk about expenses for next year. I have a few years of our debt payments on there. You can see our debt payment this year is 5.5 million. Right now we have 5.3 of that on the levy. So to get to next year's debt payment of 5.6, we already have an increase of about a little over 300,000. Again, that is debt payments are outside of the levy limit. So we're not held to that strict standard as far as how much we can increase, but it will still be an increase to our on our property taxes. So just keep that in mind. I've got some figures when we look at wages and benefits here. Wages and benefits are a good 44-45% of our entire budget. So almost half. If we look at health insurance, remember for the 2026 budget, we did see a reduction in the HSA contribution to those that qualify that are on the high deductible plan. There was a slight reduction there. Right now, health insurance premiums that we're paying in 2026 are actually lower than what we paid in 2020. So we have seen reductions since then. We had some flat renewals and even a decrease in there, where today we are still paying less than what we did in 2020 for premiums, which is really unheard of. So that's a really huge benefit to the county and to our employees when it comes to health insurance expense. We held steady at an 85-15 employer-employee split on that health insurance. Just a couple of rough figures estimated there. Obviously, it's too early at this point. Health insurance claims have been trending decent still, but it's far too early for us to have an estimate of what we might be looking at for next year. We've had a few years of 0 or a flat renewal, which is great. I put a couple of just rough estimates in there, depending on 5, 7, or 10% increase about an amount that we might be looking at increase in expense to the county if we see one of those estimated increases. Looking at wages, so salaries, again, salaries is about 20% of our overall expenses for our county budget. So I'm looking here specifically at non-union salaries, so our sheriff's department is on a union, EMS is on a union. We also have, our highway department, where about 50% or so of their salaries are reimbursable by other entities. So when we talk about our non-union wage scale, that's the wage scale that the board approved with the wage study last year. That's the wage scale when we talk about a COLA. That COLA applies simply to that non-union wage scale. So some estimates in here, this year and last year, we had a 2% COLA applied to that scale overall. That expense is about $233,000. If we add in step increases, which are approximately an average of about a 3% increase between steps, that's another $350,000. And then when you add in the benefits that are variable based upon those wages, an additional $86,000. A couple of notes on the contracts there, but essentially what I'm trying to show you here is personnel expenses. If we continue with the trend of giving everybody a step increase, applying a 2% COLA, if we have an estimated 7% health insurance increase, we're talking over $1 million just in salaries and benefits increase for next year. On the other side, I'm going to skip over the CIP, the capital expenditures for now. If we look at revenues, anticipated increases for next year, again, rough estimates at this point. The levy limit, the allowable increase for us, I'm estimating at about $160,000. That's going to be based upon our net new construction, which of course is not available until August. So I'm basing this upon what I know we've had for permitting trends, as well as the last 5 to 6 year trend that we've seen for our allowable net new construction. I'm hopeful and expecting that it'll be a little higher than that, but just for reference point, this year was 184,000. So it's not going to be substantial. Sales tax, we could potentially estimate about a $50,000 increase. Shared revenue, 20,000. We do have a couple other things in the works, certainly with fees. I know the court fees, circuit court fees legislation did go through. Rena, I don't know if you have any additional insight on that. We are still waiting for the governor to sign. That legislation was the last report I had. Very rough estimate, I'm gonna guess $65,000. Based on statewide, they're estimating that to be about a $10 to $17 million increase. The last increase we saw in the court funding was $10 million. So if we take approximately the increase we got, it's all based on volume, and I haven't dove into that far. But at any rate, that's a potential increase once the governor signs that. Also on the agenda today, we have a contract for a medical examiner, which will also allow us to apply for the innovation grant, which will have a positive impact on our budget also. Just pointing these out for you, additional revenue options afforded by statute. I'm not sitting here and telling you that you should consider these, but I'm putting everything on the table so that you can tell me absolutely not, if that's your feeling on things. But I'm just putting on there so you know we're obviously very limited on what we can and can't do with our budget. I want to make sure that you are aware of the options. So we can increase certain fees. Some fees are set by statute. Some fees we have a little more authority over to increase those. Some counties recently have gone to a wheel tax. That is something we've talked about very briefly in the past. If that's something that you would want to explore further, we can certainly get some data on that. Statutes allow counties and municipalities and school districts to go to referendum to increase their, to exceed their allowable levy limit. Again, that's something that the board would have to vote on and pass and direct a referendum to be on the ballot, and then it would have to pass in order to do that. And then the other option is short-term borrowing. So many counties have gone to short-term borrowing for things like capital purchases or highway projects. You can also do short-term borrowing for high-cost placements in some instances, as well as liability and property insurances. So again, I'm not sitting here recommending this to you, but I'm letting you know that it is an option that a lot of other counties are starting to look at. And what borrowing does is essentially they take a short-term note out in December and they pay it back right away in January or February. Of course, there are financing fees and things associated with that as well, but it allows them to get that outside of that levy limit. So you're still taxing people on it. It's, we're still needing the funds for those expenses, but those items are allowable per statute to do the short-term borrowing for. And then it gives you that little bit of cushion within those strict levy limits. Just the other things that I have on here, just for your reference, what we started doing last year with departments and we're doing again this year, those pre-budget worksheets that I have listed at the bottom of the page. So we ask all departments to complete those for Sarah and I to review as we head into the budget process. So we're looking for their list of vehicles and maintenance expenses, their current fee schedule, as well as when those, it includes when those were last updated, whether they're set by statute or if it's something that the board has authority to change, what grants that they have and the amounts, listings of mandated programs versus non-mandated in all of the departmental contracts. So that just helps to spell out some of those details for Sarah and I as we're meeting with departments and reviewing. We're looking for that information now early in the budget process so that we have time. For example, if a contract hasn't been reviewed in a while, it gives us enough time before we head into the budget approval to review those, to get some RFPs out if that's the route we need to go. And then the last thing back up to the top there, I included the last 5 years of CIP, just total CIP spend, as well as what's been on the tax levy. The part highlighted in blue is from what was approved in the 2026 budget. So that's obviously includes that 5-year CIP. So all I did was take the 2027 figures just as a starting point for what we might be looking for capital expenditures. So I apologize, it feels like probably a lot of numbers and information that I'm just rattling off here. I would try to get it on a page just to try to organize some of these thoughts. But I'm really just open up to discussion at this point. I'm not going to have all of the info in my head today, but what I'm looking for from you is some direction on, do you have strong feelings at this point of what you want to see for wages and benefits, what you want to see for fund balance draws, what you want to see for where we want to look at increased revenues or decreased expenses. Knowing going into 2027, we're going to have to either increase revenues in some fashion or decrease expenses, right? Like we can't hold flat from 2026 because it's not going to cut it. That would require another $1 million from the general fund, and I'm not comfortable doing that. So I'm going to open it up for discussion, questions, and direction.
Okay. One thing I guess I would ask, so you are looking at anticipated increases of approximately $230,000 from the revenues this next year. And then all of these expenses on the other side, so they're all separate. So the personnel, that's all wages and benefits there, that total number is $1 million. You think, okay, if everything is at what you said there at
Yes.
If
yeah, that's if you go with a step increase and a 2% COLA, and if we see a 7% increase in health insurance. Yes.
Okay, in which we kind of have to,
guess that it's gonna be some kind of increase. Okay, so then we're looking at basically $800,000, $700,000 increase if you take the total revenues. I mean, the revenue increases that you're projecting, correct?
That's on top of the 2026 budget, right?
okay,
So that does not cut into that million at all.
okay. And we're, of that $1 million, so there's $1 million subtract the 300,000 that is being brought back in, right?
From the estimated returns.
What I did at the top, when you look at the fund balance, I already accounted for that 300,000 being returned.
Oh, with the nine, yeah,
Yes.
that, with the total number there, the 7,000 or 7 million. No, I mean the 8,666,000, okay.
Yeah, that's already accounted for in there. So today you've got 8.6 in your general fund. That's accounting for the returns from last year as well as the draws for this year.
Okay. All right. And at what point, you're not looking, probably another year, you're looking at solar farm potential.
Yeah, so originally, we were supposed to have a solar farm online in about 2027, which is going to bring in $500,000 in additional revenue from our shared revenue. That's been pushed to 2029 now.
Okay. Okay, well, I guess as a starter, the only one that I see an option for additional revenue options would be the first one, increase user fees in some cases. The rest of them, I don't really,
They don't appeal to me personally, and I think the appetite from the board, if I got it from last year, is that
borrowing or taking $1 million is kind of a one-time shot. And they don't really want to do that anymore. So I guess what I would like to see is what it would look like,
if it were zero.
what it would look like if it were half of that. Just so we knew what our options would be, because it's.
So you're looking for, it when we present the budget, your suggestion would be an option of taking zero and an option of taking $500,000.
Mhm.
Okay.
Very good.
Another thing, John. Megan, if you look at the minimum current required fund balance, 7.1. With our budget going up every year, I mean, next year it won't be 7.1, the 25% will be much higher.
Yeah.
So that gap closes pretty fast. And especially if you're expecting another $230,000 budget increase. Because that's what this number is for the revenues, we're gonna take our budget can increase $230,000.
Well, right now, we're not increasing, we're closing the gap, which is decreasing the expenses, but interestingly enough, that 7.1 minimum is actually slightly lower than the previous year because we did cut so much from 25 to 26. That has actually reduced very slightly from, I think, from 7.2. But our general fund expenses combined with highway and EMS from 25 to 26 actually decreased slightly for our budget. Obviously, actuals will be.
You expect that, but that's not the standard, right? I mean, our operating budget's gonna go up every year, so this is the 25% of our operating budget's gonna go up. Dollar figure, correct?
Well, I hear you, but the position we're in right now, if we are looking to close that $1 million gap, we have to cut. So we have to reduce our expenses unless you're exploring these revenue options.
It should hold pretty steady then, if not go down a little bit.
Currently,
Mhm.
and yes, in general, if our levy went up 3%, I would expect our expenses also. But again, because we're trying to close that amount that we're pulling from that draw, we have to trim down those expenses.
Well, and the
Even like the benefit things, I mean, it makes a difference, but it's not a huge difference.
but that's someplace that would trim some back as well if we were to cut, like the health savings account. By cutting $500 out of that, is that correct? Is that what we did?
We went from $355 a month to $300 a month. So yeah, yes.
Something like that. That number, I don't think it'd be sizable, but I don't know, Sarah, would that, about what that would be if we cut it more, or, because I think that is still pretty generous, honestly.
It is, yep.
But that, I mean, that's just, I guess those are the kind of things I'd like to see what it would look like.
if we would do that and still try and maintain services and things like that personally.
So you want us to look at the HSA or the wages or?
Well, all of it, just to see where it would fall in there if we did have to cut,
Okay.
or if we did cut it.
I don't know, unless you guys are different, but I think that was kind of the appetite of the
You
board
gotta,
last year.
you gotta have a starting point, John,
Mhm.
and that's what you don't have. You gotta have some kind of a.
Mhm.
And then, you know, part of strategic planning, there's a finance part in strategic planning. And I haven't looked at a lot of strategic plans, but I would certainly think that all the departments should have some type of cost savings action on their strategic plans. At least be looking at how they're gonna deal with the reduced budget. And I don't mean we're gonna cut services, we're gonna do this, you know, what are we doing to reduce waste? What are we doing to try to draw more revenue? I mean, what is the departments themselves individually can do? As far as helping to close that gap every day that they're working here, right, through their strategic planning, so. I'd like to see that be a little bit more aggressive too. To help with this, so we don't come to the end of the year and go, oh, we gotta cut $1 million out of the budget. We're gonna get that, at least the departments will be a little bit more prepared for that.
Sure, and I mean, I will tell you that is exactly what we've been doing in the budget processes the last handful of years. Obviously, I've only been through it 1 year myself, but I'm sure Sarah and Ruth can speak to that as well. That, I mean, I've been here for 11 years and every year the messaging has been do more with less. So that doesn't change, that is where we're at. But that is what we have been constantly doing. So are there, you know, you mentioned today EMS, like are there specific things that you would like us to do a deeper dive into with some data? And again, you don't have to have this necessarily direction today, but we're just starting the conversation so that we have a starting point. Yes, we're diving into operational efficiencies with all of our departments. Are there specific things that the board does have an appetite for as far as revenues go, as far as expenses go, places that you would like us to trim, places you would like us to evaluate and assess? And again, if you don't have that today, that's okay. But that I just would give us more of just some more guardrails to stay in when we do start, so that we're looking at the right things.
I think too, one thing we've talked about, I know a lot of the committees I'm on now include their budget updates every time. And I think you put in the timeline there, like in August, we're gonna have they could share their budget, their proposed new budget with, I think it's almost something that should be mandatory, because not only, I know last year that was kind of the talk too, is that we didn't really realize, or in some cases didn't realize, where if there was a board member who was in there or board members aware
why costs are going up, or, you know, what additional people they need, or, you know, and possibly they could have a hand in that, and then they could come and defend it too at budget time. That would be helpful, and not a suggestion, but something they should do.
Yep, we can do that.
I think, I agree, John. I think when we got to the end of the budget last year, and I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I was like, looking at this 500-page document going, oh my gosh, we're $1 million over. What is it? Why? What are we doing? So if it's required that the standing committees review the budget, at least all the board members have looked at least their own standing committees. And can depend on what's in that budget also.
Right.
And if the
budgets keep going in the same trajectory without being able to raise more taxes, and I mean, people's wages aren't gonna get less or any, you know, substantially less or anything like that. So eventually, services will have to be cut, and then the board members will be more in tune with what's going on. And it makes me think of like extension last year, you know, those kind of things came up, and it was like, you know, it would have been nice to know that kind of stuff earlier, so we didn't have to react at the end. And that, luckily, that got offset by another grant that came in. But
Sure, and I mean, essentially, I'm telling you that is that is where we're going to be at, right? So, we cut, I think, 11 positions, from 25 to 26, and that trimmed that overage from 1.6 down to 1 million. So if you want to cut that again and get us down to 500,000, that could potentially mean we're cutting another 11 positions. Or it could mean we're not doing any capital expenditures, or, looking at, salaries and benefits as being half of our budget. Or cutting services, so,
And, I think if, along with us, if the department heads get that message that sooner or later, there, you just can't get blood out of a turnip, sooner or later. If they're thinking along those lines, they may look at that as, well, maybe we could do this and help us out too, to say, this is a, program that we're not seeing a lot of usage of, so maybe that's something we can cut out of the budget. Kind of get their assistance in it too. So.
So I'm sorry, you're suggesting that the department review that budget then with
Yeah.
standing committees?
Yeah, that's what I would think, yeah.
so what I'm hearing is we'll make sure that department heads share their budget request in August with their home committees, if they aren't already doing so. That'll be mandatory, and then, at this point, when we put the budget together, we will do two options. We'll do one that uses, 500,000 from surplus, and we'll do another option with 0.
I think that'd be a good starting point too, yes. Okay. Good.
And then also on your timeline, CIP, our next agenda item is strategic planning, dissolving strategic planning, part of that CIP stuff. What's your vision for exec to oversee that?
Yeah, so if we're, I guess these kind of meld into each other here, but, so on the timeline, we put either exec or strategic planning. So my vision, I think we've made good progress over the last couple of years with having the committee oversight into this, the CIP project. Well, ultimately that falls on me and the departments it falls on me to add that into the recommended budget that I present to you. I think it's helpful having that additional oversight, and digging into the process more like we've done the last couple of years with strategic planning. So I would like to see that review of the CIPs shift back to executive, or shift to executive, who really ultimately has the financial oversight and authority. I think it makes sense. I don't know that it was done that way in the past. But again, executive has always had that financial oversight and authority, and I think it would be wise to shift that back this way if the strategic planning committee is dissolved.
So we had quite a few meetings with strategic planning, with department heads. The plan to have department heads come to this meeting and review their strategic.
Correct.
Review their,
My vision for it, and ultimately it's up to you, but my vision for it would be that the process that we were doing with the CIP in strategic planning, that would be shifted to executive.
I think that would be good too. I think it just, because they did include some of that even with their future CIP stuff in the strategic planning, they could come and defend it. And, this is why we need it. I think that'd be a good addition there too. So. Okay. All right, then we'll move into B, which is discussion possible action to dissolve the strategic planning committee. So is there any other discussion on that?
So just a note, I've talked with Supervisor Peterson on this as the chair of the strategic planning committee. The committee obviously was created to create the strategic plans for the county. They did take over that oversight of CIP, which I think is appropriate to shift to executive at this point. If you choose to dissolve strategic planning, it was a committee created by the county board, so we can recommend dissolving this committee. Ruth, I'm sorry I haven't talked with you on this, but my thought on it was if they do choose to dissolve it, that when we get to the bylaw updates in April and May of this year, that we would pull it out of the county board at that point, out of the county board bylaws as a standing committee. knowing we are also looking at overall committee structure, but that recommendation really won't be coming until the later half of the year. So I think that it would make sense to do it when we do the bylaw updates with the new board in April and May.
Some of the rules that we made for that, they would continue on, is that my case, you know, about maintaining their strategic plan, things like that, that would remain in place, because I know that was the complaint before, is they made them and it sat on the shelf.
Yep.
And I guess, I've talked to different department heads, and some say they use it, some say they don't, but the ones who don't seem to be kind of strategic
by nature anyway. And so I think they were,
Already naturally
already had it in there.
doing those things,
Yeah.
sure.
But I do think it's a benefit in a lot of cases, and I'd like to see that continue on, even if there's not a committee structure.
Yeah, I agree. Tim Barut has been really instrumental, obviously, in educating all the department heads on how we are maintaining those plans and keeping up with them. He's still a resource available if we have things that come to us and our plans need updating, or if we've completed our goals and we need to potentially get a committee back together to come up with some new goals, or if goals become obsolete for one reason or another. So he is still available. He has been up until this point coming to department heads to have those ongoing discussions with department heads. I am reviewing strategic plans with department heads on our annual one-on-ones with them, just to touch base and see if there are any potential barriers or changes with their plans there. I certainly don't have the capacity to follow up on every single strategic plan every single month with each of the departments. So at this point, it is within the department head's responsibility to make sure that their staff and their department is on track with their strategic plan.
Right, and I think the standing, I think the standing committee should have that oversight. Megan certainly doesn't have the time to review everybody's strategic plan on a monthly or quarterly basis, so I think the standing committee should review that, at least be on everybody's agenda item, or every department's or every standing committee's agenda item as a line item to review strategic plan. And if there is no update, there's no update. If there is, then they can, at least the department can give an update on the strategic plan monthly. And the oversight committee can at least give direction, ask those critical questions as to what's going on with strategic plan. And if there's something that's behind, they can get an update. And if there is issues, at least then we can communicate it with the administrator, and she can handle it if there needs to be something done. Other than that,
Yeah, I think that
would be acceptable to you.
I think that's a good plan there, so. All right, with that, I'd look for a motion then to dissolve the strategic planning committee.
I'll make a motion to dissolve it.
Okay, motion by Peterson.
Second by Kirschner. Is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So that passes. All right, C, discussion possible action on intergovernmental agreement for medical examiner services with Green Lake County.
I did pass out an updated contract for you. The only change from what went out in the packet was the last number on there. For the innovation grant, the contract needs to specify if the funds are received, how they're being split between the counties. I did have a conference call today with myself, Ruth, Jason, the administrator from Green Lake County, and their corporation counsel, Jeff Mann, as well. So the agreement that we had come to was a 25% for Green Lake and a 75% for Waushara if that grant is received. Sharing of medical examiner services or sharing services such as this is something that is qualifiable under the innovation grant. So it is something I am planning to apply for, assuming that we approve the contract and move forward with this partnership with Green Lake. The innovation grant is 25% of prior year expenses. This is going to be based upon Green Lake's expenses for their medical examiner from last year. So the grant, if awarded, is approximately $38,000, and then we would split that 75% for Waushara, 25% for Green Lake. I've worked with Amanda, obviously, Toma on this contract. She does feel that this is a service they will be able to take on. It is gonna require a little bit of increase in staffing, which is the next, item on the agenda today to reorganize that office to get that additional help in if the contract is approved. Overall, combining these services and taking this on for Green Lake is a benefit to both Green Lake and Washira, as far as net impact on our budget. We've already been providing medical examiner services to Marquette County beginning in January of 2025. That partnership has gone very well, and we anticipate being able to work just as well with Green Lake County with the expanded coverage as well.
Two things, that innovation grant, that wouldn't cover the Marquette one as well, because that was after the start date or whatever.
The start date is not the issue with Marquette. The issue is that Marquette did not provide the services themselves in the year prior to transfer. They actually previously contracted with Green Lake. So my understanding is that one would not qualify. The contract also doesn't meet those, the requirements for the grant. So could we potentially amend the contract and change it? Possibly, but I don't believe that it's qualifiable because they didn't provide the services previously.
Okay, and the other question is, isn't there something in an innovation grant that would cover like facilities or something? Because we're gonna be adapting our old Tony Highway Shop for some of this usage. Would that, any of that be applied? Can we apply any of that to the innovation grant? I thought there was something for facilities as well.
There is not, no, the innovation grant is specific to services, so it's the combining or transferring of services.
Okay.
And the grant itself is based upon prior year expenses.
Okay.
So perhaps had we incurred those expenses last year, or if Green Lake had incurred some expenses, then it could potentially be included. But it has to do with the transferring and combining of services.
Okay. All right.
This just occurred to me. I wonder if we look though at the cost of the contract with the board. We will be taking away that. Like everybody had morgue costs before.
Potentially, I don't know that they're substantial enough.
Good to be added to it, maybe.
That just thought.
Yeah, and like Green Lake's more expenses would be included in this already, so, it would be Washira's potentially. We could look into that for next year, because it wouldn't be ready yet for this year.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, I just got a question. Number 24, it's got the per payment, yearly per payments. Where did those numbers come from? What's that based on?
Yep, so we added an approximate 3% increase in per year. And then came out to rough figures for monthly payments, so that's where those came from.
What's the original number? What's the number meaning?
Yeah, so we looked at what Green Lake's total expenses were, what additional expenses we were going to have, and also what we are currently contracting with for Marquette County.
So we believe.
I'm gonna tell you, we went a little higher than Marquette because I think, cut ourselves a little short with the Marquette contract, and so we will have to look at that. That was a 2-year contract that goes through this year, and so we'll have to look at that for next year. We also understood that with adding in Green Lake, we needed to take on additional personnel expenses, and so we needed to cover those expenses where it's still a benefit for both counties doing the partnership. So.
And it's not, we're sure it's not going to be a loss to Washira County.
I'm sure it's not gonna be a loss to Washira. It's going to, if we had the full year 2026, it would be an approximate 60,000 return on investment.
And I see you wrote in there as well that they're under the understanding that our county would be the priority for our medical examiner. And so if they did have to wait, that's our priorities.
Yeah, and Amanda did run the numbers, as she did prior to taking down Marquette as well. So they're with adding in this additional area, they're could be potential where you are waiting longer, one, just due to distance of traveling, and two, due to the caseload. But the numbers that Green Lake has had historically combined with what we're doing for Washira and Marquette are doable with that additional staffing.
Any other questions? Okay, I would look for a motion then to approve the intergovernmental agreement for the medical examiner services with Green Lake County. Okay, motion by Kirschner, second by Peterson. Any other discussion? You hear none, all in favor? Opposed? All right, that passes. Okay, next is discussion possible action resolution for authorizing the reorganization of the office of the medical examiner. And I see this was, you saw what that was. That's going to be a part-time office person and then other moving up in wage scale. So is there any discussion on or any questions about that? Otherwise, I look for a motion. I don't have a motion. Okay, motion by Kirschner. Is there a second? Second by Peterson. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? All right, and that passes. All right, next discussion possible action resolution ordering the issuance of tax deeds on certain tax foreclosed properties.
Okay, on this resolution, we have two parcels, both in the town of Warren. Ultimately, it looks like they were both listing errors, or when deeds were transferred, there was a portion that was left off the deed. So a prior tax lister did find these created parcels for them, and the people are deceased. So ultimately, the tax has been building. So we would like to get this approved to take the properties back. I do know with certainty that there's the John Midberg property. What we'd be doing is deeding that one to the adjoining property owner that should have gotten it many years ago. They will pay the delinquent taxes and the expense, and we'll get that transferred over.
Okay.
Sophia William and Sophia Carpenter, I believe it's the same thing. It's just like a strip of land. You know, we will have to reach out to the adjoining landowners with that property, but.
All right, most of it could be picked up by then. All right. Okay, is there a motion to accept that resolution ordering the issuance of tax deeds on certain foreclosed properties? Okay, Commissioner Peterson, second by Kirschner. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, approval of the agenda line item transfers and check, or the check register. So Kirschner, second by Peterson. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, that passes. So with that, we were looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Peterson, second by Kirschner, and we're adjourned. Thanks.